Hi everyone, I'm Gertie and welcome to a new month on Patreon. I'm so excited to introduce you to the Barbara bodice. This design is an iconic vintage bodice that you will see in a few different decades, the 50s and 60s. So basically a princess seam bodice with straps and a scoop neck. And it's an iconic vintage moment, of course, but I was also inspired to do something like this month because we have the Barbie movie coming out, and Margot Robbie was wearing a very similar dress in pink gingham in the trailer. So I thought this was the perfect moment to revisit this iconic vintage design. So after doing this for a few years now, I know that there are some things that you all want in a bodice like this. You want our full range of cup sizes, and you also want options for strap coverage. So I've given you two options. One is a narrow strap that ties in cute little bows on the shoulder. And then if you are someone who wants to wear your normal everyday bra with this dress, I wanted to give you an option for a wider strap that will cover any bra. So this is a wide gathered strap. And I'm also very excited that this bodice is interchangeable with the Lamour-series, which means you have a ton of options for not only skirts, but shorts and pants to make this bodice into dresses, rompers, and jumpsuits. And so you have many options on the Patreon platform, but also in the Charm Patterns line as well. So as always, we will link you to a list of interchangeable bottoms to make with this bodice. So I hope you love it, and I hope you love all the options. Let's get started with talking about the pattern pieces and then fabric and supplies. Okay, so as always, we're going to start out by talking about the pattern pieces. So I've minimized these down so you can see them all together and start to understand how this bodice comes together. So there are two different versions that are available for you to make. That is a thin strap with ties, with little bow ties on the top of the straps, or a wider strap to cover your bra straps with a wide gathered strap. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the thin strap version. So this is the bodice from center back to center front laid out here. So you have your center front bodice, which would be cut on the fold. You need to cut one fabric, cut one lining for all of the main bodice pieces. And you can see it's a princess seam, and this is the point where the strap joins. So on this version, that join point is only 1/2 inch. So it's a fairly narrow strap. Okay, and then you have your side front bodice. Of course, you want to choose the correct cup size for your body measurements. And this would be the side seam. And then you have your side back bodice, which gets sewn to your center back bodice. And again, that's your strap join point. Okay, and so for this bodice with the thin straps, you need to use this strap version, which is the tie strap. And you're going to cut 4 of these in your fabric. Okay, so that is the narrow strap version. Let's say you want to make the wide strap version. You are going to replace the center front and center back pieces with the wider strap version because it has a wider join point for the strap. So it's 1 inch wide there, which should cover your regular bra straps, which I know is what you guys want. Okay, so that is 1 inch wide join right there. And then you would use the same side front and side back bodice pieces. You cannot use the tie strap with this version. You need to use the wide gathered strap because it's the correct width to get gathered into that 1 inch wide join point. So it's 2 inches here, it gets gathered down to 1 inch, joined at the front strap point and the back strap point. And then you have a good 3 inches on the top of your shoulder to really give you more coverage in this version. Okay, so those are all the pattern pieces. As always, refer back to your cutting instructions for which pieces are cut in your lining and which aren't. Okay, so just make sure you always follow those. And next we're going to talk about fabric and supplies. Okay, so next we're going to talk fabric and supplies for your Barbara bodice. So fabric-wise, you are going to be looking at wovens, and light to medium weight is what I would say. And this is a great project to really dig into your stash of cottons, linens, your sort of standard everyday dressmaking fabrics. So of course, for our Barbie fantasy, we had to do a pink gingham. And this is a really lovely 1-inch buffalo check. Remember, you will have to match the gingham on the side seams and the princess seams a little bit. So keep that in mind before you choose a gingham or a plaid. But this 100% cotton gingham is a great choice. And if you go with a smaller scale, then like 1/8 of an inch, then you really don't have to match it. Okay, so other possibilities would be a quilting cotton. I know a lot of us have great stashes of novelty prints and quilting cotton, so this bodice is a great choice for those. And then linen, I also really love for this dress. So linen blended with cotton or rayon would be great. And PK, if you want something with a little texture, PK is a great choice as well. And then stretch fabrics, so you could potentially do a woven that's blended with spandex, so a stretch woven, but not a knit, just to be clear. So here are a couple stretch wovens from our stash. This is a stretch poplin from my fabric line from a few years ago, and it has just a little bit of stretch to it. This would be a great choice. It gives you just a little bit of comfort and wearing ease in the bodice. Or stretch sateen in a solid would be so perfect for this dress if you're just looking for something really classic. So this just has a little slight stretch to it. Okay, so those are your recommended fabrics. Of course, as always, this is not a comprehensive list, so make sure you check out the list of recommended fabrics in the instructions as well. You will also need lining fabric because this bodice is fully lined. So we're recommending cotton lining fabrics. Of course, you could also use a more slippery lining fabric if you liked, but for summer dresses, my favorite is a cotton lining fabric. So a lawn, a poplin, or a quilting cotton like this Kona cotton is a great choice. Okay, so thread, as always, all-purpose polyester thread. You will need a zipper. We're recommending an 18-inch long regular zipper, not invisible. And then to stabilize your zipper opening, you will want some 1.25 inch wide strips of fusible interfacing. I always love to use this kind that comes on the roll already pre-cut, so we will link you to that. And then finally, you will need the correct needle for your sewing machine for your fabric. So Microtex is a great choice. It's my favorite choice for sewing wovens like this. So make sure you match your needle size to your fabric weight. And that is it for your fabric and supplies. Okay, you're gonna see Andrea's hands this month, so thank you so much to Andrea for stepping in. And what she's showing you is that she's already stay-stitched the front neckline and the back neckline. And as well, she's already done the stay-stitching on the center front and center back on the princess seams, and stabilized the center back zipper opening with an 1.25 inch wide fusible interfacing strips. Now, the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to clip to our stay stitching on the center front and center back panels at the princess seams. So we stay stitched from the underarm down to that lower notch, and now we are clipping every 1/2 inch, making sure not to clip into our stay stitching. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to pin the princess seams together, spreading the clips on the center front panel to match the curve of the side front panel. And so the thing about this Barbie gingham is that we cut it so that the gingham would be matching across the seams. And now Andrea is going to be spending a long time making sure that when she goes to sew it, that those gingham checks are actually going to match up as sewn. So she's putting a pin through the top and bottom of each big pink stripe of the gingham and making sure that it matches on the upper side and also on the underside as she's pinning. And this process takes a little while, but it's worth it, especially if you spent the time matching your gingham as you were cutting it out. You want to make sure that it stays matching when you sew it. now when you get to the curvier part of the princess seam, you're going to need to spread those clips that you made to the stay stitching on the center front panel so that the center front panel curves to meet that exaggerated curve of the side front panel at the bust. So spread those clips and use a lot of pins. See how she's spreading it there? And now those two curves are matching each other so that they will be easy to sew. Okay, so now it's time to sew your princess seam, and you're sewing at 5/8 of an inch and back stitching at the beginning and end, and just sew right to your pins and then remove the pins before you sew over them, just to make sure that your gingham stays matched if you are working with gingham like we are. And then sew to the bottom of this princess seam and back stitch. Okay, so you want to just check that your gingham matches if you did pattern matching. And now we can press the princess seam. So this is a lined bodice, and you have the option, you can press that princess seam open if that's your preferred way of doing it, in which case you would want to notch the side front panel in between the clips. Or your other option is that you can press the seam allowances towards center front, and then they will lay nice and flat. Now, if your fabric is bulkier, you will want to trim these seam allowances down first to about 3/8 of an inch before pressing. But we're using this lightweight gingham here, so just pressing towards center front. And then we will continue with the other princess seam on the front, and then we will move to the back princess seams. Okay, so same thing on the back princess seams. Right sides together, matching the notches first, and then matching your print or gingham if you are print matching. Checking at the top and bottom of each gingham stripe, and then spreading the clips to match the curve of the side back panel. Now keep in mind that the back, of course, isn't as curvy as the front, so you won't have to do quite as much maneuvering to get these two pieces to match, but still spend your time spreading those clips, and then you're going to go stitch at 5/8 of an inch from the clipped side. Okay, so you can just check that your lines are matched up if you're using gingham, and then go ahead and press. Again, just pressing those princess seams towards center back. Okay, so the next thing is to sew the side seam. So you're going to put your bodice backs together with your bodice front, matching your print if you are using a print like this, and pinning those side seams, and then you're going to stitch at 5/8 of an inch and press the side seams open. All right, so now we're going to work on the thin tie straps. So you'll want to have interfaced your straps, and then you're going to put them right sides together, folding lengthwise, and pin along the long edge and one short end. And so what we're going to do is stitch along that one long end and then pivot at the corner and stitch along one short end, leaving one short end open. Okay, so at the machine, we're going to stitch this strap still at 5/8 of an inch, starting along the long edge. And then when you get close to the corner, slow down because you're going to want to pivot exactly at 5/8 of an inch. So use your hand wheel for that, and then turn and then finish that short end and back stitch. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is trim down your seam allowances to about 1/4 inch all around the short end and then that long edge. And then just clip diagonally across that pivot corner just to remove any extra bulk, and the other corner as well. And now you're going to need to turn your strap right side out. So here Andrea is using a tool called a fast turn, which is a tube, and then it has a little wire that goes up the middle of the tube and pulls it right side out. So you can use something like that, or of course, an easy solution is also using a chopstick or a knitting needle to push it right side out. So there are a couple ways you can do this. You probably have your favorite way, but here she is using the fast turn tool, turning this tube right side out. And then the next thing to do is to just turn out those corners at the end of the strap. And so you can use a pin or something like that to get those corners nice and neat and trim away any threads that you see at the end there. And then you're going to press your strap flat. And then the next thing we're going to do is actually attach those straps to the dress. So you're going to need to make 4 of these total, and then we will baste them to the dress. Okay, so we've got 4 finished tie straps, and we are going to attach them to the bodice next. So we're working with the wrong side of the bodice facing up, and you should have 2 little circle marks at each attachment point. So we are just determining which side of the strap we want to use. We cut them all the same, and so one side is pink and white and the other side is pink and pink. So we're just deciding we want the white and pink side to be right side out. So that side is going to go right sides together with the bodice. And Andrea's little handy tip here is that she likes to work with the wrong side facing up so that she can really see those circle marks at each attachment point and then pin right sides together. So she's really checking those 2 little circle marks that she has marked in purple there and making sure the strap is exactly between those marks and then pinning in place. And so she's going to do that with each strap and matching the raw edge of the strap to the raw edge of the bodice, centering it between the circles and pinning each one. And next she is going to stitch the straps on, and again she's working from the wrong side so that she can see her circle marks and make sure that everything's positioned correctly. And she is stitching this on. Now normally this would just be, we would consider this basting, but she's back stitching at both ends just to really secure it so that when we sew the lining on next, everything stays in place. So do this at 1/2 inch with each strap attachment point. And then next we will move on to attaching the lining to the bodice. Okay, so here we have the lining, which was constructed exactly the same as the outer bodice. And we're going to put the bodice and lining right sides together with the straps sandwiched in between them. So you can start with an attachment point here. And the important thing with this is you want to use a pin at each circle mark on your strap attachment points, making sure that the strap stays caught in between your 2 pins, because when you go to stitch this, you don't want to accidentally catch your strap anywhere else. Though if you do, it's no big deal. You can always take those stitches out, but you want to help prevent it as much as possible. Okay, and so now you're going to pin your other match points, which would include your side seams, your other attachment points, just being really careful with those straps and placing a pin on either side of the straps at your circle marks. And then continuing to pin all around the neckline, each strap point, and both side seams. Okay, so once you have pinned your neckline all the way around, we are going to prepare our center back opening for the lap zipper, otherwise known as our charm clean finish back here. So I'm sure you've seen me do this on a video before, but if not, you're going to see Andrea demonstrate it now. So on the right back opening, so you have the right side of the bodice facing towards you, the wrong side of the lining facing up. She's going to turn both those seam allowances up and towards her 1/2 inch, and they are nested together. And you have to make sure that the neckline is really smooth and matching here, and then you can fold, measure, and pin. So this is the underlap side of the lap zipper, and both of those seam allowances, the outer bodice and the lining, get nested together and turned up and towards you 1/2 an inch. Okay, so just put a couple pins there to secure that. And then we'll move on to our overlap side, which is the left side of the bodice as you're looking at it. And so now what we're going to do is turn the lining in. So these seam allowances get turned in separately. The lining will be 7/8 of an inch. So measure that on its own and pin it in place. And it gets turned the exact same way as the other side, so up and towards you. And then the dress itself gets, again, folded the same way, but you are going to fold that 5/8 of an inch towards you. Okay, so this is our clean finish. So when we go to stitch around the neckline, those folds will stay in place, and then we'll get a nice neat finish on the inside, and the facing won't be covering the zipper on the inside of the dress. So just fill out any more pins that you need to, and next we are going to stitch around the neckline. Okay, so when you go to stitch, you're just going to be really careful at your pivot points, making sure that your straps aren't caught in your stitching, and pivoting at each of those circles. And then you're going to start exactly at center back, right on that fold, okay? So you don't want to leave any gap where you start stitching. You're going to be stitching right over those folds, back stitching around the entire neckline. And when you get to a pivot point, take it really slow, stop with your needle down, lift up the presser foot, pivot, and then you're going to have another pivot point right away on the other side of that strap attachment point. Make sure you're stopping right at those right at those circles. And then you should be able to feel the strap and make sure that it's staying out of the way of your stitching. And then continue on that way until you get to the other side of the center back opening. Okay, so after stitching, one thing you can do is you can, before you start grading your neckline, just pull out each strap at the attachment point and make sure it looks really nice and clean and you didn't catch your strap in any weird places. So check each one, and if you do have an error, now's the time to fix it. So you can go back and take out some stitches, restitch, whatever you need to do, but check each strap individually and make sure you're happy with it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is grade the neckline, which just means trimming those seam allowances to different widths so that you don't get a ridge on the right side of the garment as you're wearing it. So you're going to trim the lining first, and you can start by clipping across the back corners. And then you're going to trim just the lining down to about 1/8 of an inch or a little bit wider. So trimming just the lining first, all the way around. Okay, and next you can trim the dress itself down to about 1/4 inch, and then the strap can be somewhat between those two widths. So the lining would be the narrowest, then the strap, and then the dress itself, so that you have 3 different layers there. And then now just continuing, grading the dress seam allowance all the way around, trimming down those straps. And then the next thing you're going to do is at each corner, each strap attachment point, and at the center backs, you're going to clip diagonally across those just to reduce any bulk. So here at each of these strap attachment points, trimming diagonally across those corners. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to clip into any inner curves, which this neckline is full of inner curves. So here you can see Andrea's starting to do it on the back neckline, which is curved into a dip. About every 1/2 inch, you are going to clip the seam allowances right up to your stitching. So continue that all the way around the neckline. And then the next thing we're going to do is understitch. Okay, so now we're going to understitch, starting at the center back, just not quite at center back, but just past those seam allowances. And you're going to make sure that your seam allowances are underneath the lining. So all seam allowances oriented underneath the lining. And then you're understitching just to the right of the seam line, about 1/8 of an inch or a little bit less away from the seam line. And the thing about this neckline is you're going to have to do your understitching in several different stops and starts, if that makes any sense. So once you get close to the strap, it's going to get too small to continue. You're going to have to backstitch, break your stitching, and then start again on the other side of the strap. So you're going to have to continue like that all the way around the neckline. And that's what you're going to see Andrea do next, is that here she's breaking her stitching. And then she is restarting her understitching on the other side of the strap. And it's right around the princess seam, really, where you're going to be able to get your presser foot back underneath there. And then start understitching yet again until you get to the next strap attachment point. So continue on like that, just stopping when you need to and restarting on the other side of your straps. Okay, so now you're going to turn the lining to the inside of the bodice. And you're going to just roll the lining to the outside. And you can see that Andrea turned those corners where we did the clean finish. She turned them right side out and pressed out those corners so they look nice and neat at center back. And now we are pressing the neckline edge, just rolling the lining and the understitching all the way to the outside. So you get a nice crisp neckline. And so continue pressing around the neckline all the way around the bodice like that. And then our bodice is pretty much complete except for needing a zipper and, of course, attaching a skirt or shorts or whatever you are attaching to your Barbara bodice. So in the next chapter, we will come back and attach a skirt to the bodice. Okay, so now we are ready to attach this to a skirt or shorts or pants. Anything in the Lamour-series will match up to your Barbara bodice. So we have already pressed in our zipper seam allowances at center back, and then you can just kind of unfold them once you pin them to the skirt. So you're gonna grab your skirt, and we're using this box pleated circle skirt, which is a little bit of a sneak peek for something coming up. And you're going to pin your match points first. So you might want to start with your side seams, for instance, and then make sure that your side seams are exactly on top of each other. You might want to do a couple pins at the side seams just to make sure that things don't shift. And so what you're going to see here is that Andrea is going to be very carefully matching each of those points, making sure that any style lines are matching. So for instance, if a pleat matches a princess seam, as they're designed to do in the Lamour-series, you just want to check those first. And then once you have your match points pinned, then you can fill in pins in between. And this is a relatively simple part of the process, but it does take a little while to get all those match points exactly right. So take your time with this, use a lot of pins, and then the next step will be to sew the waistline at 5/8 of an inch. Okay, so now we're going to start stitching at 5/8 of an inch, and you're just going to want to make sure to go slowly and make sure that if you have pleats or gathers or whatever is on your skirt, that everything is staying nice and flat, and stitch all the way around at 5/8 of an inch. Okay, and then after stitching, you'll just want to check from the right side that all of your match points are still lining up. You don't have any little tucks or weird pleats. And once you're happy with that, then you can press your seam allowance from the inside, press it up towards the bodice. And if you want to trim down those seam allowances, I usually trim mine down to 3/8 of an inch. You can do that. And then just press the seam allowances of the waistline up towards the bodice, and then we'll be ready to sew in the zipper. Okay, we're going to start with the underlap side of the zipper. So the seam allowance on the dress is turned in 1/2 an inch, and the lining is folded up out of the way. And so you're positioning the top stop of the zipper just underneath the neckline, and then pinning the fold right next to the zipper teeth. And here Andrea is working on a sleeve board, which just helps to have it raised and the other side of the dress out of the way, so you're not pinning through layers you're not supposed to be. And then positioning your pins all the way down to the base of the zipper opening on the skirt. Okay, and using a zipper foot, you are going to open your zipper and then stitch right next to the fold. So just about 1/16 of an inch away from the fold. stitching all the way down to the base of the zipper. And you'll see that when she gets to the waistline, there is a pleat at the waistline, but she's still going to be able to just stitch right past it. But keep that in mind if you're sewing some Elsa culottes or something like that. You're going to need to follow the instructions for your bottoms to make sure that you are sewing the zipper correctly below the waistline. But as you can see, she's just sewing top to bottom, going past this pleat right next to it, and then back stitching at the bottom of the zipper. Of course, she will have to close the zipper pull once she gets too close to it. So once you get close to your zipper pull, you can stop with the needle down and get your zipper pull out of the way by closing the zipper and then finishing up the rest of the zipper stitching. Okay, so this is your underlap half of the zipper sewn, and next we will move on to the overlap. Okay, so now we're going to pin the overlap side of the zipper. So you want to take the overlap side, which is pressed in 5/8 of an inch, and you're going to take the fold, and at the waistline you can match it there first. And you want your fold to just cover the line of stitching that you just did on the underlap side. And then you're going to pin through the seam allowances and through the zipper tape underneath about 3/8 of an inch from the fold. And this is where your top stitching is going to be. So placing pins from the waistline up, so that waistline is an important match point, and then continuing to place pins up to the neckline. And it does get a little bulky at the top because your zipper is closed, so your pull will be underneath there. So you can just open the dress now, open the zipper, and just make sure that everything looks good from the inside. Continue to pin. And next we're going to pin from the waist down to the bottom of the zipper. And with this skirt style, as I mentioned before, it is a little different because we're going to have to break our stitching at the waistline when we do our zipper top stitching, and then fold up the pleat and then continue underneath the pleat. And so underneath the pleat, we're going to continue pinning down to the base of the zipper. And just as an aside, this pleat situation would be similar with the Elsa culottes, like the sample that Susie was wearing, the little romper. So you may have to do this with multiple styles. So again, just keep in mind what bottoms you're sewing and what the directions are for the zipper. Okay, so now we're stitching the overlap side and just moved the needle to the other side of the zipper foot and stitching at 3/8 of an inch all the way down. And again, with this skirt, we're going to need to back stitch at the waistline, break the stitching, and then lift up the pleat and finish the stitching underneath. And again, as with any lap zipper, there will be a pivot point when we get to the base of the zipper. So when you get to the zipper opening at the bottom, you're going to pivot and then finish off the stitching horizontally across the base. Now the zipper is all the way open now, so you're going to go as far as you can until you get too close to that pull, and then stop with the needle down, close the zipper, and then do your pivot and finish off your zipper top stitching. And that is your overlap side. And next we'll move on to our finishing work. Okay, so finishing wise, for the bodice, you just need to turn in the seam allowances on the lining 5/8 of an inch, and then pin it in place all the way around. So to the zipper tape, and then to the waistline seam line, enclosing the seam allowances in between. So getting a nice clean finish here and pinning all the way around. Okay, and the final thing to do is to just hand stitch your lining in place all the way around those 3 edges that you just pinned. And then finally, you will want to hem your garment. And so for this circle skirt, you're going to want to hang it for at least 24 hours, level up the hem, press it up 5/8 of an inch, and then top stitch at 1/2 inch. And there it is, your Barbara bodice dress. Okay, everyone, that is it, your Barbara bodice. I hope that you have loved sewing this alongside me today. I hope you love this design, and I can't wait to see all the different dresses and rompers and jumpsuits you make with this pattern. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and of course for being patrons. And I will see you next time. Goodbye.